going to talk about how to use Excel for this week's learning material. So Module 1, Intro to Operations Research and Linear Program Problems, right? So if you scroll down here, you see we have these tutorials. You have the PowerPoint that kind of walks through some of the things that are in the book. Load in Excel Solver. This shows you how to put Excel Solver into Excel. And there are also those two videos that I put in the announcement. You can just watch or you can read here. And then they have this tutorials for doing a problem out of the book using Solver and how to graph some functions in Excel. So what I'm going to do is create a video of the tutorials. So you can either just read through them and follow the step-by-step, or you can kind of follow along in the video. So if you open up that first tutorial, right, you'll see that it has it all broken down here. So this is out of our textbook. It's on page 20. It's the example 2.2 minimizing cost problem of doing a farm using Special Feed Daily, right? And it's a mixture of corn and soybean. So you can read through the book to see where all these functions come through, but basically our variable x is the amount of corn in pounds, and our x2 variable is the amount of soybean meal in pounds in it, right? And we want to minimize the cost, all right? So it costs 30 cents a pound for corn, and then 90 cents a pound for the soybean meal. So depending on how many pounds you buy, affect how much your cost is. So we want to minimize our cost here, right? And the farmer wants to have at least 800 pounds of food to feed their animals daily, right? So that's subject to these constraints. So there's the daily feed, 800 pounds. And then the proportion of protein via corn or soybean. And then how much fiber from corn and soybean. And you can't have negative amounts of the corn or soybean in pounds, so both of those have to be greater than or equal to 0. So in the book, it talks about how they came up with these formulas and why they're using them. But these are what I'm going to apply. So here on the right, you can see in the tutorial how it walks you step by step on how to do these things. So you can read and go through if you choose to. But I am also going to recreate this here from start to finish on Excel. So I bring up an Excel. And I basically recreated part of that problem. I mean, mine is pretty because you have a nice one there. And so I've created the functions, right? So I got my objective function, right? So again, the 0.3 times the 0.9, right, for the cost. And so in this column of totals, I am building functions, right? And so I've already got it built, but I'll do that so you can see. So what you're doing is my output's down here. So I have an X output, X1 output, my X2 output, and then what my total cost is going to be in the end. So this is going to be my objective value. And it's going to be based on these functions I have written above. So to create my first function, I'm going to take the cost of corn, and I'm going to multiply it by how much corn I'm buying. Right now I have 0 in there because we haven't ran the optimization yet. And then I'm going to add to it the cost of soybean, and I'm going to multiply that by how much a soybean meal I'm buying, right? I'm just going to tab. And it says 0 for now, but that's fine because I got zeros down here, right? And then I'm going to buy, basically I'm getting some corn and some soybean. So it has a constant and 1 in front of it, so I just put 1s here. And so here, again, we're going to take how much pounds of corn, and we're going to add it to how much pounds of the soybean meal. So that's how much feed. And then the proportion of protein in these. And again, you can see I already built the function, but I'll delete it out so you can see it again. So I take the value in front of the corn, multiply it by corn, add to it the value in front of soybean, and multiply it by how much soybean I'm getting. And last, do the same thing with the fiber, right? So the amount of fiber, percentage of fiber of corn, percentage of fiber soybean, and that. And then we come over here and we look at our constraints, right? So farmer wants a minimum of 800. So whatever daily feed I buy needs to be 800 pounds or more of total between the corn and soybean. The protein is going to be greater than or equal to, I'm sorry, less than or equal to 0. And then the amount of fiber is greater than or equal to 0. And you might be asking, well, why would your protein be less than or equal to 0? In the book, it doesn't start out that way, but when you go to solve the equation, remember when you divide or multiply by a negative, the signs change. So that's why this sign change was the algebra involved in it. And the book goes through and explains why things were moved around. This video, I'm really just kind of going into the aspect of how to use solver. So we've built these, and I got zeros in for everything right now. And you can put things in here, right? I could put 3 and 5, right? And so you can see that my formulas are all working. That's a good test to make sure they work. But we want to optimize. We want technology to help us with it, because I don't want to sit here and just keep guessing at the numbers till I get the best answer. So now that you've added solver, you click on the solver. And I have it already built in here, so I'll just reset all so we can do it again. All right, so first you want to set the objective function, right? And that's this function we built over here. So that is D5. And because it's a cost problem, we want to minimize it. And so you've got a couple options in solver. You can maximize, you can minimize, or you can set it to a value of. Ours is this cost, it says we want to minimize it. And usually in the problem, they'll tell you what you want to do. If you're doing this in real world analysis, it's the problem you're trying to solve. And then what can I change? Well, all I can change is how much corn and how much soybean, right? So I'm going to highlight those two. And even though I put numbers on them, it's going to allow it to change it. Because we're telling Excel, these are the cells that you're allowed to change. So make sure you put them next to each other. If you have gaps, it's hard to kind of type it in. It doesn't like putting in commas. So you put your variables in. Now you have to add in your constraints. So I can click add, and so I have a cell reference here, right? So this is where my function is. So the first one is, how much feed am I supposed to have? So this is the value they can change. It has to be greater than or equal to, so I'm going to change it from less than to greater than. And you can just click on the cell if you have the value in, right? And that's how it has it on the little tutorial. But I'm going to show you can also just type in numbers. So my next exercise, I'm just going to type them in. So then I'm going to add this next function. Make sure I typed that in right, because Excel was not doing what I wanted it to do. So type this next function of protein has to be less than or equal to, and this time I'm just going to type in 0. And I'm going to add one more. This function of how much fiber has to be greater than or equal to, again, value 0. And I click OK. Let me scroll. All right. So now you can see I have. Did that change? That changed. I'm going to fix that. My objective function changed when I hit tab. There we go. Well, we got our objective function. It's a minimize by changing x1, x2, and here's our constraints. Now you have, if you look at the book, it says that x1 and x2 has to be greater than or equal to 0, right? However, because I have this box check, it's saying, hey, don't make things non-negative. So that takes care of that problem. You can either type them in if you want, or you can just check this that says my answer cannot be negative. And then what type of solving are we doing? So we're going to go through different types of these solvers as we progress through the course. But this first week, we're doing simplex linear programming. We're doing linear programming. So I'm going to click on that. And so everything should be typed in. And now I just click on solve. And then it'll close and it'll think. And it solved. And so you see we got the same answers in the book if you're looking at the book. But what it's saying here, and again, you can save your scenario. You can restore originals if you want to change stuff. You can look at these different reports if you want to all through this for now. And this will be good for when you're doing your little projects and such. So you can play around with this. But for now, I'm just going to click OK. I'm going to keep my answers. Let me scroll over here so you can see everything. So now we've optimized this. So we're going to buy a little more than 470 pounds of corn, right? And I'm going to get a little more than 329 pounds of soybean feed. And my cost is going to be $437.65. So this is how we use this program to help us do linear optimization. In the next tutorial, it talks about how to graph, right? So I'll shrink this down so we can see it. We'll close this one. So the other tutorial talks about how we graph, right? So, and it has all these steps and stuff. So again, if you just want to look through and see the examples, they're there. And then what I'm going to do though is I'm just going to show you in the video how I do it. Right, so in there, these are the two equations. You have y equals 2x minus 1, which is a line. And then I have y equals x squared minus x, which is a curvature, kind of almost a parabola. So we got to pick some x values. So I'm going to pick 0 to follow the thing, I think 1, 2, 3. So after you pick up a couple x values, independent variables here, you can click and drag. So if you highlight, I have this white plus or crosshairs. I put it on the bottom right. It goes to a dot crosshair, and now I can just drag it down. So we'll go out to 15. I think the book the problem might have gone out to 19, but we'll go out to 15. And now I can build my graph, right? So to solve this, I just type the equation so we can see it. And if you just put an equal sign in Excel, it turns into a big calculator, right? So equals 2 times what my x is, minus 1, right? And now again, I drag this down, and because I called this cell to be my x's, that's what Excel is doing. It's calling each one of these and it's doing all the calculations for you. So we'll come to this other one here in a minute. So we'll plot these two first. So if you highlight your two things and then go to Insert, not that insert, sorry, in this insert, and you can see graphs, right? So it has all these graphs you can pick from. You can even click on recommended charts. So you look at these and like, that's not a line, that's not a line. Oh, there it is, there's a nice line, that's what I want. So there is my line function for the first two things I've done. And so once you get this in, Excel opens up with these other things. So I can add elements to my chart, right? I can add titles, I can give it a chart title, data labels, I can do all these things. Or I can just click on this next one, quick layout, and I can pick different options to find a graph that I like, which is also what's kind of up here. So you can just click on these as well, and you can kind of see anyone that you kind of like. So you can decide which one works for you. I will go with that one for now, for no other reason, just because that's where I stopped. And you can give it titles, whatever. So you can title whatever x is, whatever y is, right? And now if you wanted to add another graph, I can just create another function. So I have this other function, y is x squared minus x. So again, put an equal sign in. I have x squared minus x. And then I drag that one down, and it has now calculated all the values for that second function. And if I want to add it to the same graphs, the easy thing to do is to right-click on the graph. If you're on a Mac, that's just Control-click, and it'll bring up a right-click. And then you can click Select Data. And once you do that, I come down here, and I have this plus. So depending on what Excel you have, it could be a plus, or it could say the words add. Mine has a plus, so I'm going to hit plus, and I'm going to add another series. So my x values are still the same. So I'll highlight all my x values. Oh, I want x just the value, so I probably shouldn't highlight that first column. So we'll change that to B2. There we go. And then my y values. Always delete everything out. If you try to highlight it, sometimes it does good and sometimes it doesn't. So highlight all my y values. And then I can give it a name if I want, which is this equation thing. Or you can actually type in a name. And then you just click OK. And now I have two sets of graphs. And so now that I have these double things on here, min and max, I don't like that. So again, if I click on my chart, I can change my design. So it's not so funky looking. So there we go, that was a little bit easier to read. And now my graph has two. And so I can clean it up, I can give it a title, right? I can change the color. So there's lots of things you can play around with here. You know, so there's my x-axis title. So these are my y's, right? Delete all the y's. And here's my x's, but on your projects and your papers, you definitely want to say what they are. These are just kind of made up numbers right now. But so you can see, you can label and create and make any pretty designs. Now, after you create this and you want to put this in a document, if you click on it, again, right click, you can copy, open up a Word document, and then paste it. And now your graph's in Word and you can talk about your results in a paper form. Because this is how we do it in the real world, outside of a classroom, right? If someone hires you to do analysis, you don't usually give them your Excel. You write up the document in a Word. You just use the Excel to help you find solutions, and then you talk about the solutions in your paper, which is what we're going to do throughout this class, through the weekly problems as well as the project. All right, so I hope you found this video useful. I'll put it on the YouTube channel, and I will keep adding videos throughout the course. Have a good day.